My girlfriend said, I called 911 and told them you hit me so you'd come home from poker night early. The police were at my door. I replied, creative. Then I showed officers my doorbell camera footage of her rehearsing her story and punching herself that I'm a 33-year-old guy, IT consultant, and I've been with my girlfriend. Let's call her Sophie, for almost 3 years. We live together in a 2-bedroom condo I bought before we met. I handle most of the bills because she's still finishing grad school and works part-time at a marketing agency. I didn't mind. I make good money, and honestly, I like taking care of her. If you'd asked me a few months ago, I'd have said Sophie was warm, smart, and maybe a little dramatic, but in that endearing way. She'd tear up watching commercials, talk passionately about things like emotional connection and energy alignment. She could also be jealous in small ways, not screaming or controlling, just probing. Questions like, who was that girl that texted you thanks? Or, do you still find your ex attractive? It never escalated, so I brushed it off as insecurity. We met during the pandemic, when I was at my loneliest. She filled the silence in my apartment with color and energy. I didn't notice how much space that energy took up until much later. Every Thursday night, I go to a poker game with a few old friends. Nothing wild, $20 buy-in, beers, small talk, decompressing from work. Sophie always joked that it was my boy's therapy. About 2 months ago, she started making comments like, I hate when you go to those games. It's like you choose them over me. Or, you come home and smell like cheap beer and laughter I wasn't part of. I'd laugh it off, kiss her forehead, tell her she was being silly. In hindsight, those were the moments the tone started to shift. One Thursday in particular, she texted me repeatedly around 9:30 p.m. Are you coming home soon? Can you please just skip one night for me? I'm feeling weird tonight. Anxious. I replied around 10:15. We're just wrapping up. I'll head out soon. She sent, okay, don't take too long, please. I came home around 11, expecting maybe a sulky mood. Instead, she was curled on the couch, eyes puffy, Netflix paused mid-scene. I asked what was wrong. She said, I just felt like something bad was going to happen. I kept checking the door, thinking you'd never come back. She cried, and I held her, even though the logic of it didn't track. Anxiety doesn't need logic, I told myself. But that night, lying beside her, I remember thinking for the first time, this feels like a test I didn't agree to take. The next couple of weeks were normal on the surface. She'd cook dinner, ask about work, send me cute voice notes during the day. But underneath, there was static, small conflicts over nothing. If I didn't answer her text fast enough, she'd send a second message. Guess you're too busy for me again. If I mentioned a coworker's name, she'd get quiet and change the topic. I started to feel like I was walking through a minefield built from invisible expectations. Then came that Thursday. I told her I'd be out at poker night from 7 to maybe 10:30. She just nodded, expression unreadable. At 9:40, my phone buzzed. Where are you? Then a missed call. Then another message. Can you please come home now? I need you. I excused myself to call back, thinking maybe she was sick or panicking again. She didn't answer. 2 minutes later, another text. Never mind. You clearly don't care. That one stung, but I decided not to engage. I'd learned not to feed those moments. I stayed until 10:15, said goodbye to the guys, and drove home. When I pulled into the lot, I saw flashing blue and red lights. There were 2 patrol cars parked near my building entrance. For a second, I thought maybe a neighbor's domestic dispute. Then I saw one officer looking directly at my door. My stomach dropped. I approached carefully, hands visible. One officer, middle-aged, calm voice, said, Sir, are you my name? I nodded. We received a 911 call from a woman inside reporting that you'd assaulted her. The air froze around me. I said what? He repeated it, slower, like maybe I hadn't understood English. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I said, that's my girlfriend. I've been out since 7. I can show you the texts. They asked me to step aside while one officer knocked on the door. Sophie opened, eyes red again, lip trembling. She pointed at me and whispered, he hit me. It was like watching a car crash happen in slow motion. You see it coming, but your brain refuses to accept the geometry of disaster. The officers separated us. One asked to see my hands, clean, unmarked. Another asked Sophie where it happened. She said, in the kitchen, then hesitated, said, no, the hallway. I handed over my phone. showing timestamps from poker night texts, my location history from Google Maps, the group chat messages about hands we played. The older cop looked skeptical, but methodical. He said, "Do you have any cameras inside or outside the apartment?" That question saved my life that I'd installed a doorbell camera 6 months earlier because of a package theft incident. It automatically records short clips when it detects motion, including sound. I pulled up the footage on my phone. 9:42 p.m. Notification. Motion detected. We watched together. Sophie pacing near the door, phone in hand, muttering. Then she turned toward the camera and said, "I'll never forget this. He'll come home if I tell them he hit me. It's not like I'll press charges. I just want him here." Then she punched herself in the thigh. Twice. Hard. Silence. The officer exhaled slowly. The younger one looked genuinely shaken. They went back inside, asked her to repeat her statement. She stammered, changed small details, contradicted herself. Within 20 minutes, she was in handcuffs. As they let her out, she looked at me, not angry, not scared, offended, like I'd betrayed her somehow. When the door closed behind them, I just sat on the floor. I didn't feel vindicated or safe, just empty. The apartment smelled faintly of her perfume, that soft vanilla she always wore. Her mug was still on the counter, half full of chamomile tea. I stared at the camera footage again. The casual tone of her voice. The way she rehearsed the lie like it was a script for empathy. I called my best friend, said, "I think Sophie just tried to ruin my life." He said, "You need a lawyer." That's when I realized this wasn't over. Not even close. The apartment felt like a crime scene even after they'd taken her away. Everything looked normal, but I couldn't touch anything. Her sweater draped over the chair, her laptop still open on the coffee table. It all felt like evidence. I sat there until almost 3 in the morning, replaying that clip again and again, as if there was some alternate version of it where she didn't say what she said. But it was always there. The same words, the same voice. "He'll come home if I tell them he hit me." At 8 a.m., I called an attorney a coworker once mentioned, a woman named Laura Chong, who specialized in criminal defense and false reporting cases. Her assistant squeezed me in for a noon consultation. I didn't even shower, just printed everything, screenshots, timestamps, footage, and drove downtown. Laura was direct, the kind of person who doesn't waste words. She watched the video in silence, then looked at me. "Do you have any prior incidents like this? Any arguments where neighbors might have heard shouting? Anything like that?" "No," I said. "Nothing even close." She nodded. "Then we'll handle this. But you need to assume she's not done. If she made a false report once, she'll try to shape the narrative before you do. Do not contact her. At all." By the time I got home, Sophie had already been released. Her parents had posted bail. There were 3 missed calls from her and 1 text. "You ruined everything. I just wanted you to care." I didn't reply. I forwarded the message to Laura. She said, "Good. Keep everything." The next 48 hours were a blur of phone calls, police statements, and exhausted silence. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. I was terrified she'd try to show up again. On Sunday morning, I got an email from HR, subject line, "Urgent, employee relations matter." Someone, anonymously, had sent a complaint to my company claiming I'd been arrested for domestic assault. It was phrased like a concerned coworker. The email said they'd seen public records confirming I'd been detained. There were no such records, of course, but HR still had to investigate. I sat through that meeting like a ghost, trying to explain something that sounded like a bad TV plot. No, I wasn't arrested. My girlfriend fabricated a report. The police have the footage. They said they'd review the situation internally. That night, I locked the door, shut all the blinds, and just stood in the dark for a long time. I wasn't afraid of her showing up. I was afraid of the story she'd already released into the world. On Monday, Laura called. "She's trying to file a restraining order," she said. "For what?" "For intimidation. She claims you're sending people to follow her." It was absurd, but Laura's voice stayed even. "This is a common escalation. We'll submit your evidence preemptively." She helped me file a cross-report, everything documented. The footage, the text messages, my location history, even the poker group witnesses. 3 days later, the petition was denied. The judge called her testimony inconsistent and unsupported by evidence. That should have been the end of it. But lies don't just disappear when you disprove them. They mutate. A mutual friend texted me a screenshot of her private Instagram story. Some people hide behind cameras and lawyers, but truth always wins. Another one. Healing from emotional abuse takes time. She wasn't naming me, but everyone knew. For the first time, I started getting side eyes from neighbors. One woman actually crossed the hall faster when she saw me. That hurt more than anything. That casual recoil, like I was radioactive. I sent all of it to Laura. She said we could pursue a defamation claim, but her advice was measured. You'll win legally. Emotionally, it's going to cost you. She was right. I deactivated my social media, took unpaid leave from work for 2 weeks, and just existed in silence. The apartment had stopped feeling like home, more like a crash site I hadn't been cleared to leave. One night, around midnight, there was a knock. I froze, peered through the peephole. Sophie. Alone. She looked pale, exhausted. I didn't open the door. I just asked, "What do you want?" Her voice cracked. I didn't mean for it to go this far. "Go away, Sophie." "I'm sorry," she said, and it actually sounded real. I wanted you to come home. You never listen anymore. You act like I'm crazy, but you make me feel invisible." It was strange. Hearing her cry didn't make me angry. It made me tired. She said, "You could just tell the cops it was a misunderstanding." And that's when I realized she didn't even think she'd done something monstrous. To her, this was just emotional leverage that got out of hand. I told her to leave or I'd call the police again. She whispered, "I still love you," and walked away. When I heard her car start, I sat on the floor again. The same place I'd been the night it all began. Only this time I wasn't in shock. I was just empty in a quieter way, the kind that feels permanent. Laura called me the next morning. She's being charged formally. Filing a false report and misuse of emergency services. Misdemeanor, possibly probation and fines. I asked what would happen next. She said, "You move on. You let the system do what it's supposed to." But I didn't feel like I'd won. I'd replayed that night so many times I could quote every second of it. The way she turned to the camera, calm, deliberate. The way I walked up the stairs thinking it was just another small argument. I didn't want revenge or punishment. I just wanted to stop feeling like my life could be rewritten at someone else's whim. The hardest part wasn't losing her. It was realizing how fragile trust really is. One accusation, and your reputation, your safety, your job, your entire identity hangs in someone else's mouth. I learned to make backups of everything: security footage, chat logs, location data. But you can't back up peace of mind. That doesn't come back once someone tries to weaponize your life. A month later, she took a plea deal, community service, a fine, mandatory counseling. I didn't attend the hearing. My lawyer called afterward and said the judge had asked her why she did it. She said, "I just wanted him to care." That line haunted me for weeks. Because part of me, the old part that loved her, almost understood. That was the scariest thought of all. Update 1. It's been about 3 months since the plea deal. I wish I could say things felt normal again, but normal doesn't mean what it used to. The first couple of weeks after her sentencing were anticlimactic. No dramatic courtroom closure, no cathartic justice moment. Just a quiet phone call from Laura. "It's done." I remember sitting at my desk, looking at the half-empty mug of coffee, and feeling nothing but exhaustion. Sophie got a year of probation, a fine, and mandatory therapy sessions. She was also ordered not to contact me directly or indirectly. The detective who handled the case said I was lucky. That doorbell footage probably saved my career. Lucky. That word hit me weird. Because yeah, technically I was lucky that a camera caught her admitting to lying. But what kind of world do we live in where you have to prove your innocence in your own living room? Work was complicated. HR cleared me officially, and they handled it quietly. But quietly doesn't erase gossip. The rumor had already mutated. First I was accused, then investigated, then cleared, but still kind of shady. People are funny that way. They act polite to your face, but there's that flicker in their eyes, the one that says, "Where there's smoke, there's fire." I stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria. I started working from home more often. I told myself it was for convenience, but really it was about control. The fewer people who looked at me, the safer I felt. I'd catch myself replaying the moment when she said, "You could just tell the cops it was a misunderstanding." The audacity of that. The way she still believed there was a shared reality where her actions were understandable. It gnawed at me. In therapy, yeah, I finally started going. My therapist said something that stuck. Abuse doesn't always come from cruelty. Sometimes it comes from entitlement. from someone believing their feelings justify anything. That hit hard. Because Sophie wasn't evil. She was just someone who'd grown up believing emotions were currency, and if she hurt, everyone else had to pay. About a month after sentencing, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line just said, "Closure." I opened it. I shouldn't have, but curiosity won. It was from Sophie. She said she wasn't breaking the no-contact order because she'd used a third-party email service. Yes, that's still contact. Yes, I forwarded it to Laura. The message was unsettlingly calm. She said she'd learned a lot in therapy, that she understood now how her anxiety made her act irrationally, and that she hoped one day I could forgive her. She also wrote, "You were the safest person I ever had, and I ruined it because I needed proof of love." I stared at that line for a long time. I didn't reply, of course. I forwarded it, deleted it, blocked the sender. But my mind kept circling back to that phrasing, proof of love. That's what all of it had been about. Not attention, not control, proof. Proof that I cared enough to drop everything, to run home when she cried. The irony was, if she'd just said she felt lonely, I would have come home anyway. I started sorting through her leftover stuff after that. It took me weeks to touch any of it. Her books, her hoodie with the frayed cuffs, the coffee mug that said, "Good vibes only." Everything felt like it carried static. I packed it all into 2 boxes and left them with her parents through Laura's office. Her mom sent a short note back. "We're deeply sorry for everything. We didn't raise her to be this way." That sentence, "this way," hung in my mind. Like it wasn't about her actions, but her condition. Like she was a broken appliance they couldn't fix. I tried dating again once. Met someone through mutual friends. Kind, patient, quiet. But on the second date, when my phone buzzed during dinner, I froze. My body just reacted. She noticed, asked if everything was okay. I said, "Yeah," but my voice cracked. That's when I realized I wasn't ready. I didn't trust anyone enough to let them near the version of me that had been accused, doubted, and nearly erased. Most nights, I walk the same route near the river. I play a podcast or sometimes nothing at all. The silence helps. There's a small camera mounted over my front door now, a newer model with cloud backup. I check it more often than I should. Not because I expect her to come back, but because the feeling of proof has become addictive. When you've been falsely accused once, every moment without evidence starts to feel dangerous. I talked about this with my therapist last week. She said, "It sounds like you're trying to prevent chaos by over-documenting reality." She's right. I laughed when she said it, a tired kind of laugh. But the truth is, that's how I survive now. I keep receipts. I save screenshots. I track locations. I used to think trust meant believing someone. Now I think it means being able to verify them and still choosing to stay. The last time I thought about Sophie, really thought about her, was when I saw her name pop up in a mutual friend's story months later. She looked thinner, older, like the world had finally caught up to her. I didn't feel hate or pity, just distance. If she wanted proof of love, I got proof of something else entirely. That love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's surrender. Final update. It's been a year since everything happened. It still feels strange to write that. A whole year of distance between me and the night that split my life into before and after. I moved. Not far, just a few blocks closer to the city center, but it feels like a new world. The new apartment is smaller, simpler, quieter. No shared furniture, no ghosts in the corners. I didn't even bring my old couch. It had her perfume in it, buried deep in the fabric. I couldn't stand it. Work eventually stabilized. A few people left, new ones joined, and the gossip faded. I never told anyone new what happened. It wasn't shame anymore, just exhaustion. You can't keep reintroducing your trauma like it's part of your resume. Laura and I stayed in touch for a bit after the case closed. She told me once, during a follow-up call, "You'd be surprised how often these things happen. Not the 911 call part, but the manipulation, the weaponized emotion." That phrase, weaponized emotion, stuck. Because that's what it was. A feeling turned into ammunition. I started volunteering at a local men's support group, mostly guys going through messy breakups or custody fights. At first, I went because I didn't want to talk to anyone else about my situation, but somehow talking to people helped. There was one guy who said his ex threatened to hurt herself if he didn't quit his job to spend more time with her. He asked me, "How do you even respond to something like that?" I told him, honestly, You can't fix someone by breaking yourself. I guess that's what I learned the hard way. Around 6 months after the case ended, I got a message on LinkedIn from an unfamiliar name. I almost ignored it, but the profile picture looked vaguely familiar. It was Sophie's cousin. She wrote, "Hey, I don't mean to cross a line. I just wanted to let you know Sophie's doing better. She's still in therapy. She told me to tell you she's sorry. Not expecting anything. Just she wanted you to know." I didn't reply. Not out of anger, just because there was nothing left to say. It was like being handed an apology written on a paper you've already shredded. But it stayed in my mind longer than I'd like to admit. Because despite everything, there was still that part of me, small, inconvenient, that wanted to believe she meant it. Not because forgiveness would fix anything, but because I was tired of carrying the opposite. Last month, I saw her. It wasn't planned. I was getting coffee on a Saturday morning, and she walked in. Different hair color, heavier sweater, same eyes. She saw me too. For a second, we both froze like we'd stumbled into a dream we weren't supposed to share. She gave a small nod, almost imperceptible, and I nodded back. That was it. No words. No scene. Just acknowledgement. It was enough. When I got home, I sat on my balcony for a long time, thinking about how a year ago I couldn't even step outside without feeling watched, and now I could just breathe. I realized then that I didn't need her to feel sorry anymore. I didn't even need to be understood. What I needed was to exist without defending myself. I still keep the camera at the door, still save my receipts, still write down dates and names and times. Not because I expect another accusation, but because habits born from fear don't die easily. But I also started taking pictures of small things again. Sunsets, my cat sleeping in ridiculous poses, my coffee steaming in the morning light. Evidence of normal life. Proof that the world didn't end, it just changed shape. Sometimes people on Reddit ask, what happened after, when a post like mine gets shared? The truth is, after isn't cinematic. There's no clean slate. You just learn to live with the knowledge that trust can shatter quietly, and that sometimes survival looks like boredom, like routine, like choosing not to check the doorbell feed for the third time. I don't hate Sophie. I don't think she's evil. I think she was lost in a storm she mistook for love. But what she did taught me something irreversible. Empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. You can care deeply for someone and still need distance. You can love someone and still have to protect yourself from them. Every now and then, when someone brings up a story about a false accusation online, I see people say things like, "That never happens," or "He must have done something." I don't argue. I just close the tab, because I know how quickly the truth stops mattering once fear enters the room. I've rebuilt piece by piece. I work out more, sleep better, and I've started talking to someone new, slow, careful, with a kind of honesty I didn't have before. I told her from the start, I need transparency. Not because I don't trust you, but because I've lived through what it looks like when reality gets rewritten. She didn't flinch. She said, "Then let's write it together." That line, simple, almost corny, made me realize something. After all the chaos, the legal mess, the paranoia and isolation, I'd been chasing one thing. Not vindication, not revenge, but shared truth. The ability to live a life that doesn't need to be recorded to be real. I backed up the last of the old files last week. Court documents, emails, police reports, her texts. I moved them to an encrypted drive and labeled it simply, closed. Then I powered off the hard drive and put it in a drawer. Not to forget. I don't think forgetting is possible, but to acknowledge that the evidence isn't my life anymore. It's just what I had to build to protect it. So yeah, that's where I am now. Still standing, still cautious, but breathing easier. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone who's been through something like this, it's this: truth doesn't heal you. Time and small, boring kindnesses do. Truth just keeps you alive long enough to find them.